My wife cheated on me with her ex, humiliating me in front of her family, and I handed her the divorce papers. I never expected to witness something like this in my own life. I was used to hearing about it from different people or maybe on social media, but going through something like this in reality can shatter your world. I am a simple man and work as a professor at a university. I have been married to my wife Lilac for 10 years, and we have 2 children. I met her at a party where my aunt suggested to my mother that she invite Lilac out. I was never interested in dating. So I never really dated anyone because I was always worried about my doctorate and my education. But after seeing Lilac, I was mesmerized by her beauty, and just like her name, she seemed soft like a flower. My parents had been insisting for a long time that I should get married. So I asked Lilac out. Our parents had already interacted at the party and wanted us both to get married on the first date. It was incredible. It was fun to be with her and at that moment, she was doing dental work, and we ended up going out. For a year, and we got married. Now 10 years have passed. Our daily life was quite normal. She was a wonderful mother and wife. I never felt any problems in my life after her arrival, and she took great care of me. But that was just the beginning, and I never knew that curiosity would lead me to an unexpected turn. After 10 years, knowing about her past would have helped me untangle the knots that I never really tried to understand. Things were going smoothly, and in 10 years of marriage, I had never doubted her until a month ago, on an ordinary day, when things turned very ugly for both of us. Maybe it was me creating assumptions in my head, or maybe she was hiding something because I had never had any negative perception of her. It was one night when she returned from the clinic at an unusual hour. I tried to call her, but she didn't answer my calls. At first, I thought maybe she had too many patients that day. So I called the receptionist at her clinic, and she told me that Lilac hadn't gone to the clinic that day, which made me curious and tense. I was very nervous thinking about what could have happened. I couldn't sleep. It was past midnight. When she walked in, she looked very tired. I was about to ask her why she had taken the day off, but before I could say a word, she passed by me and told me that she had many patients today and wanted to sleep. After hearing her lie to my face and knowing the truth, I sat on the sofa, anxious, thinking about what could be the reason for her lie, which was something new. I covered her with a blanket and looked at her face. She was sleeping peacefully and without stirring. I wanted to avoid any kind of conversation in the morning, so I left for work early. I couldn't sleep because I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had to prepare the questions for my student's upcoming exam. So I thought waking her up in the morning would be a bad idea since it would cause stress and arguments for both of us. I came back from work and saw her car in the parking lot while I was petting my cat on the porch. I saw Lilac through the window. She was texting someone, smiling and blushing. As soon as I walked in, she immediately set her phone aside and started helping our oldest son, James, with his homework. She always hugged and kissed me, but this time her smile faded after she looked at me. She greeted me with a rough, "Hello." Hello, it sounded a bit uninteresting. It was very uncomfortable to face something so unusual. The next night, I asked him to bring me a cup of hot coffee. I had the coffee cup in one hand and was texting someone with the other. I smiled, looked at her once, and then looked away. But my second glance saved our little son Max from burning himself with the coffee on his head while his mother was busy texting God knows who. I yelled at Lilac for the first time in our 10 years of marriage because of her carelessness. She wouldn't stop apologizing. So I told her I wanted to talk to her about some things. I let the kids play video games for a while so we could have a proper conversation instead of asking her where she was last night, knowing that could give her a hint. I asked her where her attention was and who she was talking to on the phone. She looked at me apologetically, and just as she was about to say something, her phone started buzzing. It happened 3 times. Sometimes what bothered me a lot was that she apologized and told me that the day before yesterday she had met up with an old friend and that last night they had decided to catch up, which is why she arrived late. She still hasn't told me that she wasn't at her clinic. I wonder if hiding information counts as a minor deception. What bothers me is that now it's almost midnight and I still see that she is awake online and chatting on her phone. Seeing her talking to someone at 4 in the morning didn't seem strange to me. But the conversation I overheard by chance made me realize the opposite. I would like to quote it so that you all can read it. "It wasn't the marriage of my dreams. He is boring and old-fashioned, and I am tired of the same old sex. God. I need something special in my life. Oh, you really wanted someone who was old-fashioned and boring. I truly failed as a husband. I thought I was happy with you. The arrival of a new friend changed everything. Who is their new friend? She always slept in my arms, sometimes she would buy me flowers and treated me so well. I can't believe hearing all of that. I returned to my side of the bed, I heard her footsteps, and the door opened. She went back and wrapped herself in the blanket, hugged my back as if she were, and fell deeply asleep regarding me. My instinct was clearer than water, and deep down in my mind, I knew she was genuinely drifting away from me. After that night, I started to suspect her and began to follow her. Everything went downhill, and it was worse than I expected. If a person is capable of deceiving with minor things, then eventually they have something big up their sleeve. I couldn't sleep, and my head was pounding. After breakfast, I told her that I could drop her off at the clinic. At first, she didn't respond, and then she told me that she was going to meet with James's teacher at the parents' meeting. I found it amusing. Doesn't she know that the meeting was yesterday and that I already attended it? But I didn't lose sight of the lies she was telling me. I didn't say a word and went to work. On my way to the office, I got a call from her clinic. The receptionist asked me. Because Lilac hadn't gone to the clinic in 3 or 4 days and wasn't even responding well to calls or text messages, the patients had made appointments in advance, and when the doctor didn't show up, they felt very frustrated because they had their appointments on the respective days. One thing led to another, and my doubts were being clarified day by day. Instead of being a puppet, I decided to see it with my own eyes. I immediately finished my work and let my intern take care of the rest. I left my office and headed to her clinic knowing she wouldn't be there. I entered the clinic and called her. She didn't answer the call, but she returned it after 2 minutes. I told her that I had visited, but she wasn't there. She couldn't say anything for a few seconds and then responded hesitantly that she was visiting an old patient who couldn't come to the appointment. I was lying because when I asked the receptionist if there was an appointment for a home visit, she told me there wasn't. I went back home, and my 2 children were studying quietly. Our nanny, who takes care of James and Max, was an old friend of my mother's and the person I trusted the most. I prepared dinner for them and asked for a few days off to follow my wife. Things went as planned, and I decided to keep quiet until I gathered all the evidence to properly address my doubts. During dinner, I asked James about the meeting, and he in turn asked me what meeting I was talking about since we had already attended the parents' meeting. Lila's face showed satisfaction. She took a bite and said she just wanted to talk to James's teacher about his progress. I left. I set the spoon aside and looked at her. She asked me what was wrong, and I sighed. And I asked him if he had seen the report that I had sent him by phone. He apologized and told me that he had forgotten. I asked him how he could have forgotten something so important. After being on the phone all day, she asked me irritably if what I meant to say was that I did nothing but stay on the phone all day. I told her no and that she was taking it the wrong way. She got up very angry at my statement and yelled at me, saying that it was unfounded and that I was the one who never tried to do anything for the family. Your statement made me furious, but instead of letting it all out, I let her speak. I asked her what she meant by that, and then she said again that I was a boring person and that our marriage had lost its spark. The spark made me laugh and I thanked her for turning the conversation around to use it as a shield for her thoughts and feelings, and I continued eating my meal. She left again. At the same time she was on the phone laughing and talking, but I didn't want to hear the conversation. I wanted to see it for myself and gather the evidence. I never checked his phone, and with that behavior, I knew he had a password. I waited until finally he fell asleep, and I took his phone. It had a password. I tried many things, but it wouldn't unlock. There was something in her forgetful personality that made her write down passwords in her notebook. I took out the notebook and there was the phone. It finally turned on, and my hands were shaking as I opened the text messages. But I had to do it, and there I was. The truth is I stayed sitting on the floor with the phone in my hand, scrolling through the sexting, the nudes, and the I love yous I had sent to a guy named Richard. That night I cried. I don't remember the last time I cried like that. I put my hand over my mouth to stifle the sobs and took a deep breath because I had little time and needed evidence. I immediately took screenshots of their chats and sent them to my phone. Before saving the phone, I had to delete. I took screenshots of the gallery and fortunately checked the gallery, and there were photos of them. I sent those photos to my phone and deleted all the evidence that could let them know I had checked their phone. In the morning, I went to work as usual, but in reality, I went to my friend Elias's house. We've been friends since childhood, and he knew everything about my life. I told him everything that had happened, and he couldn't believe it either. He kept saying that if I hadn't shown him the evidence, He would have slapped me for a joke like that. After a while, I headed towards Richard's address mentioned in one of the messages and parked the car behind a tree. It wasn't my car, it was Elias's. After waiting, I saw Richard outside his house with flowers in hand, and Lilac got out of her car and hugged him tightly. I quickly took the photo and couldn't look at them for more than a few seconds. I kept wondering if I didn't appeal to her, a bit of honesty would have been better and could have fixed everything. But neither did she want to lose our family, nor could she stop deceiving me, no matter how much it broke my heart. It shattered my ego because in a world full of unfaithful people, I was very proud of myself and of her for being a stable and loyal couple. She mocked my calm nature. This lasted 3 or 4 days, and I gathered satisfactory evidence because it was my moment to pour oil on the burning fire and properly ruin the already damaged marriage. I had already told everything to our nanny, and she offered to let me know when my wife would leave the place again. Our nanny called me and informed me that she was going to visit her sick relatives, so she wouldn't be there today, and I gave her permission. I called Lilac, told her the same thing, and asked her to come home so I could leave since James and Max would be alone. She immediately agreed. I was with Elias, telling him and discussing what we should do about this matter. I didn't have the courage to tell our parents these things. Suddenly, I received a call from Lilac, in which she was sobbing. And he said that Mom had fallen down the stairs and had broken her arms and that he was taking her to the emergency room. My skin froze and anxiety took hold of me. I panicked, not knowing what to do. I wasn't in the right frame of mind to drive the car, so I asked Elias for it. When we arrived at the hospital, the doctor told us not to worry, that it was just a minor injury and that it would heal in a few weeks. I sighed with relief and kissed my son's forehead while Lilac was talking to my mother on the phone. I was sitting next to James and asked him about the incident and how it had happened. He told me that Max was climbing the stairs and that he shouted and called for Mom many times, but she didn't pay attention because she was on the phone, and then Max slipped and fell upon hearing that. This made me very angry. I walked up to her and threw her phone on the ground. Everyone was looking at us. I shouted and I yelled at him for being so irresponsible. Elias was trying to calm me down, but he couldn't. Max could have gotten seriously hurt. I said a lot of things, and she was trying to play the victim, saying that I was an absent father. After hearing this, I was able to get closer to her and whispered in her ear that at least I was better than her and that I wasn't sleeping with anyone behind her back. She looked scared, like a frightened cat. After that argument in the hospital, Elias took our children to his house, and I returned home with Lilac. We didn't say anything on the way back. I felt guilty. I was just pretending because I saw her sending messages several times, and that made me even angrier in the end. When we got home, I confronted him about what he told me. It left me amazed. She must have been thinking that I sympathized with her, but I have no sympathy for cheaters. She told me that she had gone out with Richard in high school and that the relationship had ended a month before we got married. She never wanted to marry me, but she had no choice. You see, Lilac's father is also a dentist and had his own clinic, which Lilac had her eye on. But her father set the condition that she had to marry someone respectable to inherit it, otherwise, it would go to her brother, who was 5 years younger than her and also interested in dentistry. Richard was unemployed and was a novice. So she broke up with him and decided to marry me. She told me that she ran into Richard a month ago at his clinic when she went for a dental cleaning for a photo shoot since she works as a model for a fashion design company. I had tears in my eyes, and she was already crying and asking me for another chance to fix this, but it was all a game at this point. She knew very well that Richard wouldn't marry her and couldn't afford to lose a stable family. She also claimed that I wasn't her type of person and that half the time she felt trapped. In response, I asked her if she was blaming me for having a different personality that made her unfaithful and not her own actions. He got up and started shouting at me that I wasn't understanding and that was why he preferred Richard over me. I walked towards her, grabbed her hands in anger, and told her to stop with the nonsense and the manipulation. I told her that the deception was her own choice and that she wanted to do it not for me. I got very upset by her statements and did everything I could. I left the place and asked Elias to leave James and Max with their grandparents, and I will stay at his house for a while. I haven't spoken to him. After arriving home, I don't want to talk to anyone. Perhaps letting my emotions flow in front of strangers will help me calm down. Right now, I'm not able to think clearly. Besides, Max is already here, and I was working on my latest project, which basically means satisfying my ego. So I spent 3 days at Elias's house and did my university work. I refused to talk about any of this with him and avoided any conversation related to it. After a while, I went back home, and to my surprise, it was decorated with flowers and balloons. Then Lilac came with flowers and started to apologize and ask for my forgiveness. She had been sending me messages and calling, and I avoided talking to her. I felt nothing for her except pure hatred, but to get back at her, I accepted that she manipulated me one more time. Now her pretentious behavior all the time was clear to me, and honestly, she never really took care of the kids, the nanny did. As a mother, it's a responsibility, not a favor for your own child. That's why the kids liked me or the nanny more than their own mother. I was busy preparing Max's birthday and pulled by Lilac as couples therapy and other different things to rebuild this relationship. She was trying hard to make it seem authentic while meeting with Richard behind my back once a week. We decided to invite close family members for his birthday. What included my parents and siblings, and the same for her before everything happened. Birthdays used to be so much fun, but now it disgusts me to think that she was just pretending the whole time. After the cake-cutting ceremony, it was time to reveal the greatest gift to his father. Asked James and Max to go to the other room and open their presents while everyone was relaxing. I called Lilac and asked her if she was going to give the gift she had prepared to her father. Her father seemed happy, just like everyone else. He kept nodding his head and signaling no. He had teary eyes when I handed the gift to her father. He opened it and saw the photos, and then he stood up and yelled at her for going back to that unemployed man and for ruining our marriage. Another gift was for Lilac, the divorce papers that had arrived 10 days ago. Her brother and my family were in shock when I told her father everything. Her father asked her to sign the document, to leave the hospital tomorrow, and to find a job elsewhere, as he couldn't allow her to ruin his name. Lilac cried and begged her father for forgiveness, and her mother was devastated. She ruined this for everyone, and a small feeling of remorse should have made her stop, but she continued seeing him. Later, I allowed her to meet with James and Max on weekends, and I refused to let her take them for longer after her irresponsible actions. After the divorce, we went our separate ways. James and Max missed her, but it's better to be raised by a single father than by an irresponsible one. As for me, I keep moving forward with my life, staying busy with work and the kids, but the past will always cling to me like a parasite. Although my revenge satisfied my ego, seeing that I wasn't getting what I wanted helped me overcome my mental health issues, and I moved on with my life.